The coffee cup exploded against the briefing room wall, ceramic shards scattering like shrapnel, as brown liquid painted diagonal streaks across the government-issued paint. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Blackwell's voice cut through the shocked silence with the precision of a bayonet. "You think this is acceptable?" His finger jabbed toward the doorway where a woman stood frozen, coffee pot trembling in her grip. She couldn't have been more than 5'2", drowning in a server's uniform 2 sizes too large. This civilian has no business being within 50 feet of a tactical briefing. Who authorized kitchen staff in a classified zone? Lily Harper's knuckles went white around the pot handle, but her face remained a mask of careful neutrality. Around the massive oak table, 12 officers shifted in their seats like school children caught cheating. Some found sudden interest in their briefing folders. Others allowed thin smiles to crack their professional facades. The silence pressed down with the weight of judgment. Blackwell closed the distance in 3 aggressive strides, his 6'3" frame casting her entirely in shadow. "You're what? 100 pounds soaking wet?" He circled her slowly, a predator assessing wounded prey. "You look like a strong breeze could snap you in half. And they've got you serving warriors?" He pivoted to address the room, voice dripping with theatrical contempt. "This is what happens when we let standards slip. Next thing you know, we'll have shopping mall security running tactical operations." Sergeant Derek Cassian's laugh erupted from the back row, harsh and performative. "Sir, I don't think she could carry a rucksack half a click, let alone—" "She shouldn't be carrying anything except her resignation papers," Blackwell interrupted, his attention snapping back to Lily like a whip crack. His eyes locked onto hers with the intensity of interrogation room spotlights. "You're dismissed, permanently. Report to Human Resources and collect your final check. I want you off this base by 1800 hours. Lily set the coffee pot down on the nearest table, with movements so precise they bordered on mechanical. Her hands didn't shake, her breathing didn't accelerate. For 1 heartbeat, maybe 2. Something flickered behind her eyes, something ancient and cold that had no place in a cafeteria worker. It came and went so quickly that anyone blinking would have missed it entirely. But no one was looking closely enough to see. Not yet. She turned and walked toward the door, her footsteps silent despite the institutional tile flooring. The way she moved, shoulders level, spine straight, feet rolling heel to toe with practiced efficiency, would have told a different story to anyone trained to read body language. But these men saw only what they expected: a frightened woman retreating from justified authority. What they were about to discover would shatter every assumption they'd ever made about strength, about power, and about the woman they'd just dismissed as worthless. The door clicked shut behind her with the finality of a coffin lid. Before we continue with what happens next in this story, I need to ask you something important. Have you ever been underestimated, dismissed because of how you look, where you come from, or what people assume about you? That burning feeling when someone judges your worth without knowing your story. If this moment resonated with you, hit that subscribe button right now, because what's about to unfold will remind you that appearances can be the most dangerous deception of all. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens in the next 60 seconds. 8 months earlier, Lily had walked through Fort Bragg's main gate with nothing but a duffel bag and a request form for civilian employment. The gate guard had barely glanced at her credentials before waving her through. Another face in the endless stream of contractors, dependents, and service workers that kept the military machine running. The personnel officer who processed her application asked exactly 3 questions: prior work experience, reason for seeking employment, criminal background. Her answers were textbook mundane: restaurant service, needed steady income, clean record. The background check came back so unremarkably clean, it might as well have been laminated. No one questioned why a 32-year-old woman with no local ties would relocate specifically to work in a military installation cafeteria. No one wondered why her references, while verified, all came from establishments that had since closed. No one noticed that her emergency contact section remained conspicuously blank. She was hired within 72 hours. Now, standing in the industrial kitchen that had become her sanctuary, Lily folded cloth napkins with mechanical precision. Her hands moved in patterns that had nothing to do with hospitality training, each fold crisp at exactly 90 degrees, edges aligned with mathematical accuracy, the final product compact enough to fit in a cargo pocket. Muscle memory from a different life, a different version of herself that technically no longer existed. Willow Anderson, her only real colleague in the sprawling cafeteria operation, paused mid-chop at the prep station. "You okay? That was pretty rough in there." Her knife work slowed as she studied Lily's profile. Blackwell's always been a piece of work, but that was excessive even for him. Lily's hands never stopped their rhythmic folding. "It's fine." "It's not fine. That was humiliating. You should file a complaint with..." "With who?" Lily's voice remained flat, emotionless. "The same HR department that answers to officers like him? The same chain of command that watched 12 people laugh while he destroyed someone they see as beneath them?" She placed the folded napkin on the growing stack with geometric precision. "I just need this job to be quiet, simple, that's all." Willow opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Something in Lily's tone suggested depths that shouldn't be probed. Instead, she returned to her vegetables, the rhythmic thunk of knife on cutting board, filling the silence between them. Across the kitchen, Lily's posture shifted almost imperceptibly as footsteps approached from the corridor, her weight redistributed to the balls of her feet. Her shoulders drew back half an inch, her chin tilted up exactly 3 degrees, eyes tracking the doorway in her peripheral vision without turning her head. The stance lasted perhaps 2 seconds before she consciously relaxed back into civilian casualness. But Colonel Ronan Foster caught it. The deputy base commander had spent 32 years in special operations before accepting this administrative posting as his sunset assignment. He'd seen that exact micro-adjustment thousands of times in Fallujah safe houses, Kandahar forward operating bases, and countless classified locations his grandchildren would never know he'd visited. It was the involuntary response of someone trained to identify threats before conscious thought could interfere. Cafeteria workers didn't move like that. Foster collected his coffee in silence, studying Lily through the practiced indifference of a career intelligence officer. She kept her attention focused on the napkins, but her awareness of his presence radiated like heat. When he moved left toward the condiment station, her body tracked him with infinitesimal adjustments. When he moved right toward the exit, she compensated with equal subtlety. She was maintaining tactical awareness of his position without appearing to notice him at all. Foster added cream to his coffee with deliberate slowness, watching her reflection in the polished steel napkin dispenser. As he turned to leave, his eyes caught on her forearms where her sleeves had rolled up slightly during work. The scar tissue was old, professionally treated, but unmistakable to anyone who'd seen blast pattern injuries. Circular, roughly 4 inches in diameter, consistent with IED fragmentation at close range. He filed the observation away and left without comment. By 1400 hours, Lily's termination paperwork had arrived via interoffice mail. Erica Winters, the base HR director, delivered it personally with the kind of satisfaction usually reserved for closing business deals. "Lieutenant Colonel Blackwell has made his position clear," she announced, standing in the kitchen doorway with arms crossed. Her tailored blazer and perfect posture screamed career bureaucrat. "Your services are no longer required. You have until end of business today to clear your locker and surrender your base access credentials." Lily accepted the manila folder without opening it. "Understood. No argument? No tears?" Winter's eyebrow arched with something between disappointment and suspicion. "Most people in your position would at least ask for a second chance." Would it matter? The question hung in the air between them, sharp-edged and crystalline. Winter's jaw tightened. No, it wouldn't. She turned on her heel and departed, leaving the kitchen door swinging in her wake. Willow threw her dish towel at the prep station, with enough force to scatter garnish across the stainless steel. "That woman is a nightmare. I swear she gets off on this stuff." She turned to Lily, frustration giving way to concern. "What are you going to do? Pack?" Lily folded the termination letter with the same mechanical precision she'd applied to the napkins. "Find something else. It's not complicated. It's not fair. Fair stopped mattering a long time ago." Lily pulled off her apron and hung it on its designated hook with careful deliberation. "Thanks for being decent. Not everyone is." She walked toward the locker room, leaving Willow standing amid prep vegetables and unanswered questions. The afternoon shift change brought fresh chaos to the cafeteria. Soldiers rotating off duty, contractors grabbing late lunch, officers conducting impromptu meetings over coffee. In this transitional crowd, Lily became effectively invisible, just another face in khaki service clothes navigating the organized confusion of military life, which meant no one initially noticed when she passed the small arms maintenance classroom and paused. Through the half-open door, Lieutenant Bradley Hoffman was conducting a training session on M4 carbine maintenance. 6 junior enlisted personnel sat at tables scattered with disassembled weapons, taking notes while Hoffman demonstrated bolt carrier group removal. His instruction was competent but uninspired, reading directly from the technical manual with the enthusiasm of someone fulfilling a mandatory requirement. Lily's feet stopped moving. Her eyes tracked the components laid out on Hoffman's demonstration table with the focus of a surgeon studying anatomy. Hoffman fumbled the bolt extraction, nearly dropping the firing pin. It clattered against the table, rolling toward the edge. His hand shot out too slowly. The pin would have hit the floor, except Lily's hand materialized from nowhere, snatching it midair with reflexes that defied casual observation. The room went silent. She straightened, holding the pin between thumb and forefinger. 23 seconds of absolute quiet followed, while every eye in the room fixed on this small woman in cafeteria clothes who just moved faster than physics seemed to allow. Hoffman recovered first, his expression cycling through surprise, confusion, and settling on defensive irritation. "Thanks, I had it." The retaining pin was loose. Lily's voice carried none of the deference usually expected from civilian staff addressing officers. She set the firing pin down, then reached for the bolt carrier assembly. "May I?" "May you what?" Instead of answering, Lily picked up the bolt, rotated it exactly 135 degrees, and pressed the firing pin through the channel with her thumbnail. Her movements were economical, practiced, faster than Hoffman's had been by a factor of 3. She aligned the retaining pin, snapped it into place with a motion that suggested she'd performed this operation several thousand times, and reassembled the bolt carrier group in 2.3 seconds. The 6 students leaned forward simultaneously. Hoffman's face flushed. "Where did you learn that?" "Television." Lily set the completed assembly down and turned toward the door. "Good afternoon, Lieutenant." She was 3 steps down the hallway when Hoffman's voice followed her. "Wait, that's not something you pick up from television. Who taught you weapons maintenance?" Lily kept walking, her pace neither hurried nor slow, just the steady rhythm of someone with somewhere else to be. Behind her, she heard one of the students whisper something about crazy fast hands, and Hoffman's sharp command for silence. Military-grade communication technology has evolved beyond what most people realize. Secure encrypted devices designed for special operations forces now incorporate quantum-resistant algorithms that protect classified information from even the most sophisticated cyber attacks. These ruggedized tactical smartphones feature biometric authentication, satellite connectivity in remote locations, and can operate in extreme temperatures from -40 to +60 degrees Celsius. With battery life exceeding 72 hours and waterproof ratings suitable for maritime operations, this technology represents the cutting edge of field communications security. By 1600 hours, Major Vincent Fletcher had Lily Harper's personnel file spread across his desk in the intelligence office. As the base's senior intelligence officer, Fletcher had developed a professional paranoia that had served him well through 3 combat deployments and countless security investigations. He'd learned to trust his instincts when something felt wrong, and everything about Lily Harper's file felt wrong. It was too clean. Employment history showing 5 years across, 7 different military installations, each position identical: food service, maintenance, administrative support. References that checked out perfectly, but all came from supervisors who had since retired or transferred to non-traceable positions. A background investigation that revealed absolutely nothing noteworthy. No debt, no criminal history, no family contacts, no social media presence, no digital footprint beyond the absolute minimum required for basic employment. In Fletcher's experience, invisible people were either running from something or hiding in plain sight for operational reasons. He pulled up the Defense Department personnel database and ran her social security number through the clearance verification system. The response came back instantly: no records found. That meant one of 3 things. Either her SSN was fake, which should have been caught during initial screening, Or it was real but had never been used for security clearance purposes, statistically improbable for someone who'd worked on 7 military installations. Or her records were sealed at a classification level above his access. Fletcher picked up his secure phone and dialed the Defense Security Service headquarters. 20 minutes of bureaucratic navigation got him to a senior analyst who could run deeper searches. Harper, Lily, female, DOB, December 3, 1992. Current employment Fort Bragg Civilian Services. Fletcher read off the details while his computer screen refreshed. I need full background verification and any associated clearance history. The analyst's keyboard clattered through the phone line. Then silence. Then more typing. Then a longer silence that made Fletcher sit up straighter. Sir, I'm showing... Hold on. More typing. That's strange. The system is returning a restricted access flag. I'll need supervisory override to... A pause. Sir, this file requires SAP-level authorization to access. I'm showing a JSOC classification marker. I don't have clearance to tell you anything beyond that. Fletcher's grip tightened on the phone. JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. The units that didn't officially exist, running missions that never appeared in briefing books or congressional oversight reports. Can you tell me when the classification was applied? I'm sorry, sir. I literally cannot access any details. The file is locked at a level I didn't even know existed until 30 seconds ago. If you need more information, you'll have to go through JSOC channels directly. Fletcher thanked her and hung up. He stared at Lily Harper's employment photo, bland, unremarkable, the kind of face that disappeared in crowds, and felt the first cold touch of real concern. A cafeteria worker with JSOC-level classified files. Either someone had made a catastrophic security error, or Fort Bragg was hosting someone far more dangerous than anyone realized. The evening shift brought cooler air and longer shadows across the base. Lily had collected her final paycheck, cleared her locker, and surrendered her access badge to the gate security office. Everything she owned fit in the same duffel bag she'd arrived with 8 months ago. She was walking toward the visitor parking lot when Derek Cassian's voice cut through the twilight. Leaving so soon? I thought you'd put up more of a fight. He stood near the PX entrance with 2 other Rangers, all 3 in PT gear with the easy confidence of men who'd never been challenged. Guess Blackwell was right. Weak people fold when you push them. Lily adjusted her duffel strap and kept walking. Cassian stepped into her path. I'm talking to you. I heard you. She moved to walk around him. His hand shot out, gripping her shoulder with enough force to stop her momentum. You don't just walk away when a sergeant is... The world tilted. One moment Cassian's hand was on her shoulder. The next, he was stumbling backward, his grip broken by a wrist rotation he hadn't seen coming. Lily hadn't struck him, hadn't done anything overtly aggressive, but suddenly there were 3 feet of space between them, and his hand was throbbing from a nerve compression he couldn't quite identify. Don't touch me. Her voice carried no emotion, no anger, no fear, just flat statement of fact. Cassian's face flushed crimson. His friends tensed, hands forming fists. The parking lot suddenly felt very small and very isolated. You think you're tough? Or you think that little move means something? I think you should move. Lily's posture hadn't changed, still relaxed, still casual, but something in the air around her had shifted. The other 2 Rangers felt it too, exchanging glances that communicated uncertainty. Or what? Cassian stepped forward again. You'll file a complaint? You don't even work here anymore. You're nobody. Before the situation could escalate further, headlights swept across them. A vehicle pulled into the lot, a command car with rank insignia on the plates. Colonel Foster emerged, his presence immediately changing the dynamic. Sergeant Cassian. His voice carried the kind of authority that required no volume increase. Something I can help you with? Cassian straightened reflexively. No, sir. Just saying goodbye to a former employee. Foster's gaze moved from Cassian to Lily, taking in her duffel bag and the careful distance she'd maintained. Ms. Harper, unexpected circumstances require your presence at base operations. Please come with me. It wasn't a request. Lily followed Foster to his vehicle without comment. As they drove away, she watched Cassian and his friends grow smaller in the side mirror, their confusion evident even at distance. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Foster's hands gripped the steering wheel with parade ground precision. "We have a situation. Someone attempted to breach the secure communications building about 40 minutes ago. 3 individuals, unknown affiliation, heavily armed. They're currently contained in the building's exterior perimeter, but we can't get close without risking casualties. Base security is pinned down." He glanced at her profile, noting the complete absence of surprise or concern. "Interesting timing," Lily observed. "Extremely interesting, especially since our tactical response team is off base at a training exercise. We're understaffed, under-equipped, and these people seem to know our protocols intimately." Foster pulled into a restricted area, showing his credentials to the gate guard. "The building they're trying to access houses classified intelligence systems. If they get inside, we're looking at a catastrophic security breach. And you're telling me this because? Because I think you already know why." The vehicle stopped at the command post, a temporary structure bristling with antennas and surrounded by armed personnel. Officers moved with controlled urgency, radio chatter creating a constant background hum of coordinated chaos. Foster led Lily past security checkpoints that should have stopped her, using his rank as a battering ram through protocol. Inside the command center, Captain Ivy Thornton was coordinating the response from a wall of monitors showing multiple camera feeds. The secure communications building appeared on 6 screens simultaneously, its exterior lights creating harsh shadows that made threat assessment nearly impossible. "Status," Foster demanded. Thornton didn't look away from the screens. 3 hostiles confirmed. They've disabled the exterior motion sensors and cut through the first security fence. Current position is the loading dock on the northwest corner. They're trying to bypass the secondary door lock but haven't succeeded yet. We've got 4 security personnel providing overwatch from hardened positions, but the angles are poor. Any direct approach would expose our people to crossfire. Have they communicated demands? Negative. No attempt at contact. This is a straight penetration attempt. Thornton finally glanced over and saw Lily. Her expression cycled through confusion and suspicion. "Sir, who is—" The lights died, not just in the command post, across the entire sector. Through the windows, they watched darkness consume the communications building and surrounding structures. Emergency lighting kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing everything in red. "They cut the power grid," Thornton said, already reaching for backup systems. "We're on generators now, but our external cameras are down. We're blind." "Not completely." Foster moved to a laptop running on battery backup, pulling up thermal imaging from the building's HVAC sensors. 3 heat signatures glowed white against the cool blue background, moving with practiced coordination toward the loading dock entrance. "They're using the darkness to advance. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they're inside." Lily studied the screen with the focused intensity of someone reading a technical manual. Her eyes tracked movement patterns, timing, the spacing between the 3 figures. "They're not military," she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "Their spacing is wrong, too close together, moving as a single unit instead of maintaining fire team intervals. They're trained, but it's private sector training, probably contract security or corporate espionage." She pointed to the center figure. "That one's the tech specialist. See how the other 2 are oriented toward him? They're protecting his approach to the door." Thornton's skepticism was evident. "And you know this how?" Lily ignored the question. "You need to separate the tech from his security. Create a scenario where they have to split their attention. Force them to choose between completing the mission and survival. Easier said than done when we can't get close without getting shot." "You can't." Lily turned to Foster. "I can." The command center went silent, except for radio chatter and the hum of generators. Thornton stared at Lily like she'd suggested solving the problem with interpretive dance. "Ma'am, I appreciate whatever action movie logic you're working with, but this is an active tactical situation with armed hostiles. We don't send civilian cafeteria workers into—" "She's not going in as a cafeteria worker," Foster interrupted. His voice carried a certainty that stopped all argument. "Are you, Ms. Harper?" Lily met his gaze. The mask she'd worn for 8 months cracked just enough to let something older and colder peer through. "No, sir, I'm not." "Good. Because we need someone who can move through that darkness without being detected. Someone with close quarters combat training. Someone who's done this before." He gestured to the thermal display. Can you neutralize 3 armed hostiles without alerting base security to your methods? Yes. How confident are you in that assessment? Completely. Thornton looked between them like they'd both lost their minds. Sir, you can't seriously be considering. Captain, what I'm considering is preventing a security breach that could compromise ongoing operations across multiple theaters. If you have a better option in the next 90 seconds, I'm listening. Foster's tone made it clear he wasn't actually listening to alternatives. Ms. Harper, what do you need? Dark clothes, entry point away from current security positions, and everyone to forget they saw me. Foster nodded once. Done. Captain, get her tactical gear from the ready locker. Black fatigues, no insignia. And make sure our security teams know to ignore any additional heat signature moving toward the building. They're to maintain their positions and engage only the 3 known hostiles. Thornton opened her mouth to protest, saw Foster's expression, and closed it again. Yes, sir. If you're still watching, you already sense something extraordinary is building here. The clues are adding up, aren't they? Before Lily's true identity is revealed, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to see that strength doesn't always announce itself. The biggest reveal is coming, and you'll want to be here for it. 3 minutes later, Lily emerged from the ready room, wearing black tactical fatigues that fit too well to be coincidental. She'd pulled her hair back tight and secured it with practiced efficiency. In the red emergency lighting, she looked like a shadow wearing human shape. Foster handed her a small radio earpiece. This is encrypted to our command channel. I'll guide you if needed, but maintain radio silence unless absolutely necessary. Lily fitted the earpiece and tested the connection with one finger tap, a gesture Foster recognized from a dozen special operations briefings. She moved toward the exit, her gait transforming from civilian casualness to something far more predatory. Ms. Harper? Foster's voice stopped her at the door. Try not to kill them. The paperwork would be extensive. No promises. She disappeared into the darkness. The thermal feed showed her heat signature separating from the command post, moving with unsettling speed toward the darkened communications building. Where the security team moved in careful bounds between cover points, Lily flowed like water, smooth, continuous, nearly invisible even on thermal imaging, as she used every shadow and structure to mask her approach. She moves like a ghost, Thornton whispered, unable to hide her awe. Where did you find her? I didn't find her. She found us. Foster's eyes never left the screen. And I'm starting to suspect we should have recognized her long before tonight. Lily reached the building's perimeter fence in under 2 minutes, approaching from the east where the hostiles' attention was focused west on the loading dock. The fence was 12 feet of chain link topped with razor wire, a barrier designed to slow intrusion long enough for response teams to mobilize. She scaled it in 4 seconds. No hesitation, no wasted movement. Her hands found purchase points with certainty that suggested she'd practiced on identical barriers countless times. She cleared the razor wire with a controlled flip that would have impressed Olympic gymnasts, landing in a crouch that made no sound despite the gravel surface. The 3 hostiles were 30 yards away, focused on the loading dock door's electronic lock. Their thermal signatures showed weapons held at ready positions, compact submachine guns, probably 9mm based on their silhouettes, professional equipment for professional criminals. Lily closed the distance to 20 yards before the nearest hostile sensed something wrong. He turned, weapon coming up, and found nothing but empty darkness. His thermal goggles showed him the same view the base security had. A lot of ambient heat from buildings and equipment, but no human signatures, because Lily had dropped flat against the building's exterior wall, where the residual heat from afternoon sun exposure masked her thermal signature. She was effectively invisible to both naked eye and electronic surveillance. The hostile shook his head and returned to his team. Through her earpiece, Lily heard him mutter, "Just nerves," in accented English. Russian, probably, or Eastern European. She moved closer. 15 yards. 10. The tech specialist had the door panel open, working on the interior wiring with a bypass device that sparked occasionally in the darkness. The other 2 provided security, one covering each approach vector. Their positioning was competent, but showed the fundamental flaw she'd identified earlier. They were too close together, prioritizing mutual support over field of fire. Lily reached the loading dock's corner support pillar and paused, invisible in its shadow. She could hear their breathing, the soft clink of equipment, the tech's frustrated muttering as the bypass refused to cooperate with military-grade security encryption. "Base, I'm in position," she whispered into her radio. "On my mark, kill the emergency lights for 5 seconds, then restore them." Foster's voice crackled back immediately. "Confirm. You want complete darkness? 5 seconds, mark on 3, 1, 2, 3, mark." The red emergency lights died, plunging the entire sector into absolute darkness. What happened in the next 8 seconds would later be analyzed frame by frame from multiple thermal feeds, each reviewer struggling to explain movements that seemed to defy human capability. Second one, Lily exploded from the pillar, covering 5 yards before the hostiles could react to the sudden darkness. Second two, she reached the nearest guard, a man 6 inches taller and 60 pounds heavier. Her left hand trapped his weapon arm against his body, while her right struck his temple with the heel of her palm, a controlled blow that shut down his nervous system without causing permanent damage. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Second three. The second guard turned toward the sound, weapon tracking. Lily was already moving, using the first guard's falling body as cover. She came in low, under his sightline, her elbow driving into his solar plexus with precise force that paralyzed his diaphragm. As he doubled over, gasping for air that wouldn't come, she locked her arm around his throat in a blood choke that cut circulation to his brain. 3 seconds later, he went limp. Second 4 through 7. The tech specialist had finally processed that something was wrong. He reached for his sidearm, fingers fumbling in the darkness. Lily closed the remaining distance in 2 strides, her hand clamped over his before he could draw, her other hand finding the nerve cluster at his collarbone. She applied pressure with surgical precision, not enough to cause lasting damage, just enough to override his nervous system with pain signals that made resistance impossible. Second 8. The emergency lights came back on. The command post erupted in stunned silence. On every thermal feed, they watched the same impossible image. 3 hostile bodies on the ground, all unconscious or incapacitated, and Lily standing over them with the tech specialist's bypass device in her hand. She'd disarmed all 3, neutralized them without firing a shot or raising an alarm, and secured the breach equipment in 8 seconds of total darkness. Sweet merciful. Thornton's voice trailed off into speechlessness. Foster leaned back in his chair, a thin smile crossing his weathered face. "Captain, I believe you wanted to know where I found her?" "Sir, I didn't find her. She's been here for 8 months, hiding in plain sight. And I think it's time we figured out exactly who we've been serving coffee to." On the screen, Lily was zip-tying the unconscious hostiles with flex cuffs she'd apparently carried, despite the ready room having no such equipment available. Base security was converging on her position, weapons drawn, shouting challenges into the darkness. She held up her empty hands and waited calmly for them to arrive, showing no concern about being held at gunpoint by 6 confused security personnel who had absolutely no idea what they'd just witnessed. Private Mason Carter reached her first, his M4 carbine trained center mass. "On the ground! Hands behind your head!" Lily complied with a kind of smooth efficiency that suggested she'd been on both ends of this scenario many times. She dropped to her knees, laced her fingers behind her head, and waited while Carter and his team cleared the immediate area and secured the 3 unconscious hostiles. "Base, we have 4 individuals in custody," Carter reported over his radio. 3 confirmed hostiles and 1 unknown female. He looked at Lily with complete confusion. "Ma'am, who are you?" "That," Foster's voice cut through everyone's radio simultaneously, "is an excellent question. Stand down, Private. Ms. Harper is friendly. Bring her to the command post immediately." The next hour dissolved into controlled chaos. Military police arrived to transport the 3 hostiles to detention. Base security locked down the sector, while forensics teams processed the scene. Medical personnel examined all 3 unconscious men and confirmed what everyone already suspected. They'd been incapacitated with professional precision that indicated advanced combat training. And Lily sat in Foster's office, still wearing the black tactical gear, drinking water, while a dozen senior officers tried to figure out what to do with her. Fletcher arrived with his laptop and a file folder that had grown considerably thicker since the afternoon. He set both on Foster's desk, with the careful handling usually reserved for explosive ordnance. "I made some calls," he announced without preamble. Called in every favor I've accumulated in 20 years of intelligence work, and what I found is extremely limited, highly classified, and absolutely terrifying. He opened the laptop, turning it so everyone could see the screen. It displayed a single line of text: access denied, SAP level Omega, JSOC authorization required. That, Fletcher continued, is what happens when you try to access Ms. Harper's military service record, SAP level Omega. That's special access program classification, so restricted that most generals don't have clearance to read the files. It's reserved for operations that officially never happened. Foster's expression didn't change. What kind of operations? The kind where operators are given new identities after mission completion. The kind where entire task forces are deleted from existence. The kind where successful outcomes mean no one ever learns what happened. Fletcher turned to Lily. Ma'am, I can't compel you to tell us anything, but given what just occurred, I think we deserve some context. Lily set down her water bottle. For the first time since arriving at Fort Bragg, she allowed her carefully constructed mask to slip completely. What emerged was harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous than the quiet cafeteria worker they'd known. You want context? Her voice had changed, still quiet, but carrying an edge that made everyone unconsciously lean back. 8 months ago, I came here looking for peace, for anonymity, for a job where no one asked questions and I didn't have to remember what I'd done. She met each officer's gaze in turn. Tonight proved why that was impossible, because someone always needs something, and people like me can't stop being what we are, no matter how much we try. And what are you? Thornton asked. Tired. Lily stood, rolling her shoulders with the casual ease of someone who'd spent the last hour neutralizing armed threats. But to answer your actual question, I'm someone who spent 12 years doing jobs that required special skill sets, jobs in places you won't find on maps, jobs that ended when my entire task force was declared killed in action during a mission that officially never occurred. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Foster leaned forward. What task force? One that doesn't exist in any database you can access. One whose members were given 2 choices after mission completion: accept new identities and disappear, or remain in the system and risk exposure that would compromise ongoing operations. She gestured to the laptop, still showing the access denied message. That's not a security error. That's intentional erasure. I'm a ghost. We all were. Were? Fletcher caught the past tense. How many members? Classified. How many survived? Lily's silence answered louder than words. Fletcher closed his laptop slowly. And you've been serving coffee for 8 months, while running from what exactly? Not running from anything, running toward something I lost along the way. Lily moved toward the door, then paused. I'll be leaving Fort Bragg tonight. I suggest you forget this conversation, forget what you saw, and let me disappear again. It's safer for everyone. That's not possible. Foster stood, his command presence filling the room. 3 armed hostiles attempted to breach our secure facility. You stopped them. There will be questions, reports, investigations. Your involvement is documented on multiple camera systems. Then I suggest you edit those recordings to show your security team making the arrests. Because if my name appears in any official report, people will start asking questions that lead to answers you don't want public. Lily's hand was on the door handle. Trust me on this. Whatever gratitude you feel right now, it's not worth the consequences of digging deeper. Before anyone could respond, the office phone rang. Foster answered, listened, and his expression shifted from authority to something approaching shock. Ma'am, you have a call. Secure line. Pentagon. He held out the receiver. Someone who claims they've been looking for you. Lily took the phone with visible reluctance. This is Harper. The voice on the other end was female, crisp, and carried the kind of authority that made colonels nervous. Everyone in the room could hear it clearly, despite the receiver being pressed to Lily's ear. Wraith, status report. The single word, Wraith, electrified the atmosphere. It was spoken with the casual familiarity of a call sign used countless times over years of operations. Fletcher's hand moved involuntarily toward his notepad. Operational, Lily replied, her tone shifting to match the speaker's military formality. Civilian status maintained until tonight. Hostile action forced exposure. We know. We've been monitoring the situation. A pause. New tasking is available if you're willing to consider reactivation. Negative. My contract is fulfilled. I'm inactive status. Tehran's situation has evolved. Scorpion is confirmed active. Multiple sightings, current location unknown. Original objectives remain incomplete. The room watched Lily's face cycle through emotions that passed too quickly to name. When she spoke again, her voice had gone completely flat. Tehran is closed, file destroyed, personnel reassigned or deceased. Not all personnel. The voice carried weight that suggested intimate knowledge of painful history. Wraith, you're the only one left with the operational background to complete this. The situation is time-sensitive. Refusal means we lose the window entirely. Then lose it. I'm done. 47 missions, 12 years, perfect operational record. And you want to end your service by walking away from unfinished business? The voice sharpened. That's not the operator I trained. Lily's grip on the phone tightened enough to make the plastic creak. The operator you trained died in Tehran. I'm what's left, and what's left wants peace. Peace is a luxury, Wraith. You know that better than anyone. A longer pause. I'm not ordering you. I can't. You're officially deceased, remember? But I'm asking. One last time. Help us close this. The silence stretched for 10 seconds, 20, 30. I'll consider it, Lily finally said. No promises. That's all I'm asking. Expect a secure package within 72 hours. Respond through the usual protocols if you accept. The line clicked dead. Lily handed the phone back to Foster without explanation. Every eye in the room was fixed on her, questions piling up like traffic behind an accident. Wraith, Fletcher said slowly, testing the word. That's a call sign. Special operations, probably Tier 1 based on the classification level. His analyst brain was working triple time, connecting fragments of information into terrible possibilities. And Tehran, there was an incident 3 years ago. Never publicly reported, but intelligence circles had whispers about a JSOC operation that went catastrophically wrong. Multiple casualties, entire team declared killed in action, all records sealed. He stared at Lily with dawning horror. That was you. That was someone who doesn't exist anymore. But you survived. How? Lily's laugh was sharp and humorless. Survival is relative, Major. I'm breathing. My teammates aren't. You tell me if that counts as surviving. The raw grief in those words silenced every follow-up question. These were career military officers, most with combat experience, all familiar with survivors' guilt. They recognized it in Lily's voice like recognizing their own faces in mirrors. Thornton broke the uncomfortable quiet. Ma'am, I don't pretend to understand what you've been through, but tonight, you saved this base from a catastrophic security breach. Whatever else you are or were, right now you're someone who put herself at risk to protect people in operations that aren't even your responsibility anymore. That counts for something. Does it? Lily's smile was sad. In my experience, heroic actions just create expectations for more heroic actions. It never stops. There's always another mission, another threat, another reason why you can't step away. She looked at Foster. Permission to leave the base, sir? Granted, but Ms. Harper, or whatever your real name is, I think you should know something. Foster stood and moved to his window overlooking the darkened base. 8 months ago, when you applied here, I personally approved your background check. It was perfect. Too perfect. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't identify what. So I let it go, figuring maybe you were just someone running from an abusive relationship or witness protection or something mundane. He turned back to face her. But I also did something else. I made a note in your file. Nothing official, nothing that would trigger alerts. Just a personal observation that you reminded me of operators I'd worked with in Fallujah. Your stance, your awareness, the way you moved through spaces like you were constantly running threat assessments. His eyes met hers. I've been watching you for 8 months, trying to figure out why you felt familiar, and tonight I realized you reminded me of someone who saved my team during a cluster of an operation outside Fallujah in 2019. August 12th. We were pinned down in a residential sector, 3 wounded, ammunition critical. Someone appeared out of nowhere, small, fast, impossibly lethal, cleared 4 buildings in under 10 minutes, pulled us out. Never saw their face clearly. Called themselves Wraith. The office had gone absolutely silent. That was you, Foster said simply. Wasn't it? Lily's expression gave away nothing, but her silence spoke volumes. My team survived because of you. 7 Rangers who went home to their families instead of flag-draped coffins. And for 8 months, I've been serving coffee alongside the person who saved my life, and I didn't even know it. Foster straightened to attention and rendered a slow, formal salute. Ma'am, whatever you decide about your future, know that you have my gratitude and my respect, always. The other officers in the room followed his lead, rising and saluting with precision that transcended rank and regulation. They were saluting not the woman they'd known as a cafeteria worker, but the shadow operator who'd spent a dozen years in darkness so others could stand in light. Lily returned the salute with crisp military bearing, then dropped her hand and headed for the door one final time. One question, Fletcher called out. The 3 hostiles tonight, they weren't random. They knew our security protocols, our shift schedules, our weak points. That level of intelligence suggests insider knowledge. Were they connected to your past? Probably. Tehran left loose ends. Loose ends have a way of finding patterns, and 8 months in one location creates patterns. Lily opened the door. Which is why I'll be gone by morning, for your safety as much as mine. She disappeared into the hallway, leaving 6 senior officers staring at empty space and trying to reconcile the quiet woman they had ignored with the weapon they had just witnessed in action. Fletcher was the first to speak. Sir, we need to brief base command. There are protocols for this level of security exposure. Which will follow, Foster interrupted, after we give Ms. Harper a head start. Call it professional courtesy between operators. He returned to his desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a file folder that hadn't been there minutes earlier. Besides, I think we have more immediate concerns. He spread the contents across his desk, surveillance photos of the 3 captured hostiles, taken from security footage before the power went out. Fletcher leaned in, his analytical mind processing information at computer speed. Eastern European, private military contractors based on their equipment and tactics. That bypass device they were using. I recognize the design. Israeli security tech, black market variant. Costs about $50,000 per unit. He looked up. These weren't random thieves. This was a professional intelligence gathering operation. Targeting our communication systems, Thornton added. If they had succeeded in breaching that building, they would have had access to classified tactical networks covering half the operations in the Middle East. She paused. Someone paid serious money for this attempt, and based on Ms. Harper's comment about Tehran loose ends, I'm guessing we know who. Foster closed the file. Here's what's going to happen. We report the breach attempt through proper channels. We credit base security with the capture. We make no mention of civilian involvement. The 3 hostiles get processed through military intelligence, and whatever information they provide goes up the chain with appropriate classification markers. And Ms. Harper? Fletcher asked. Disappeared, just like she wanted, just like she deserves after what she's done. Foster's expression hardened. But we also put out quiet alerts through JSOC channels. Let the right people know that Wraith surfaced. If they're smart, they'll leave her alone. If they're not, he didn't finish the sentence. No one needed him to. Across the base, Lily was collecting her duffel bag from the visitor parking lot where she'd left it hours earlier. The night air carried the scent of pine and diesel fuel, familiar military smells that felt both comforting and suffocating. She threw the bag in the back of her ancient Honda Civic and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. Her hands were shaking, not from fear or adrenaline. Those responses had been trained out of her years ago. This was deeper, more fundamental. The shaking came from the terrible realization that she'd just thrown away 8 months of carefully constructed peace in 8 seconds of muscle memory she couldn't suppress. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, then recognized the encryption signature on the caller ID. This is Harper. The package will arrive at your last known address in 48 hours. The same voice from the Pentagon call, but less formal now, more personal. I know you said you'd consider it, but we both know you've already decided. Do we? Wraith, I trained you, recruited you, sent you into situations that should have killed you dozens of times over. I know how you think, and I know that leaving Tehran unfinished has eaten at you every single day for 3 years. A pause. You're not built to walk away from incomplete missions? None of us are. Maybe that's the problem. Lily stared through her windshield at nothing in particular. Maybe being built a certain way is exactly what's wrong. We're not weapons. We're people. And people are supposed to have choices. You have choices. You're choosing to open that package when it arrives. You're choosing to read the briefing. And you're choosing to finish what we started. The voice softened slightly. But if I'm wrong, if you really have found peace, then burn the package unopened. Walk away. I'll respect that decision. Will you? Ask me after 48 hours. The line went dead. Lily started her car and drove through Fort Bragg's main gate for the last time, nodding to the gate guard who barely glanced at her departing vehicle. In the rearview mirror, the base lights receded into darkness, taking with them the illusion of normal life she'd tried so desperately to maintain. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Willow. Heard something crazy happen tonight. Hope you're okay. You were the best coworker I ever had. Good luck wherever you go next. The simple humanity of that message made Lily's chest tighten in ways that combat stress never had. She typed back, "Thank you for being kind when others weren't. That meant more than you know." She drove for 2 hours before stopping at a highway rest area. The manila envelope from HR was still in her passenger seat. Termination papers, final paycheck, the bureaucratic end to her attempt at civilian existence. She tore it all into small pieces and threw it in a trash can, watching 8 months of carefully constructed identity disappear into garbage alongside candy wrappers and fast food containers. Her hands had stopped shaking. That should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like confirmation of everything she'd feared. The woman who'd spent 8 months folding napkins with military precision had been an illusion, a mask worn to convince herself she could be something other than what training and trauma had made her. Tonight had torn that mask away, and what remained was someone she'd tried very hard to leave behind. Wraith. The name echoed in her mind with the weight of 12 years and 47 missions, operations in 17 countries, outcomes that remained classified in files most generals couldn't access, teammates whose faces she could still remember with crystalline clarity despite the official records claiming they'd never existed, and Tehran, always Tehran, the mission that went wrong in ways that defied probability, the intelligence failure that cost 5 lives, the escape that left her as the sole survivor, carrying guilt that no debriefing or psychological evaluation could touch. 3 years of running, 8 months of hiding, and now a phone call asking her to go back to the city where everything ended, to finish what they'd started, to face the one person from that night who'd somehow survived alongside her. Scorpion. The name sent cold recognition through her nervous system. They'd been partners once, 2 ghosts working adjacent missions with occasional overlap. Professional respect built over years of operations. Trust earned in situations where betrayal meant death. Then Tehran happened, and Scorpion vanished. Not deceased like the rest of the team, not declared killed in action, just gone, declared rogue in classified briefings that scrubbed all mention of his real identity. And now he was active again, which meant either he'd been working his own agenda for 3 years, or something in Tehran had compromised him in ways that made reintegration impossible. Either option was dangerous. Both options required someone who knew how he operated, how he thought, what weaknesses he tried to hide beneath layers of operational security. Someone like Wraith. Lily returned to her car and drove through the night, her destination uncertain, but her trajectory inevitable. By dawn, she'd reached a cheap motel outside Raleigh where she paid cash for a week's stay and registered under a name that had never appeared on any official document. The room was anonymous to the point of depressing. Thin walls, thinner mattress, the lingering smell of cigarettes despite prominent no-smoking signs. She dropped her duffel on the bed and stood at the window, watching morning traffic build on the highway below. 48 hours until the package arrived. 48 hours to decide if she was ready to stop running and face everything she'd left unfinished in Tehran. 48 hours to remember why she'd become Wraith in the first place, and whether that person still existed beneath the layers of civilian identity she'd tried so desperately to build. Her reflection in the window showed someone caught between 2 lives, neither fully civilian nor fully operational, suspended in uncomfortable limbo that couldn't last. The phone rang again. This time, it was Foster. "Ms. Harper, I wanted you to know, the 3 hostiles we captured are talking. Not much, but enough. Their Russian FSB, contracted through a Syrian intermediary. Their target wasn't actually our communication systems. It was personnel files. Lily's blood went cold. They were looking for someone. Yes, and based on their search parameters, I think we both know who. Foster's voice carried grim certainty. Someone knows you're here, or were here, and they're willing to commit serious resources to finding you, Tehran. That would be my assessment. Which means staying at Fort Bragg just became very dangerous for everyone involved. You leaving was the right call. A pause. But I also wanted to tell you, if you need resources, support, anything at all, you have friends here now. People who understand what you've done and what you're facing. Don't forget that. Thank you, Colonel. It's Ronan. And thank you, Wraith. For Fallujah. For tonight. For reminding us that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones we never see coming. The call ended. Lily set the phone down and stared at her reflection some more. Somewhere in Tehran, Scorpion was alive and operational. Somewhere in the intelligence community, people were mobilizing resources to find her. And somewhere in her own mind, the voice that had kept her alive through 12 years of impossible missions was whispering that peace had always been a temporary illusion, that she'd always known she'd have to go back, that some ghosts could never rest while their past remained unresolved. She opened her duffel bag and pulled out the contents, clothing, toiletries, and, at the very bottom, wrapped in a waterproof case, the items she'd sworn never to touch again. A satellite phone with encrypted protocols that only worked with specific networks. A challenge coin stamped with Task Force Obsidian's unofficial insignia. A photograph of 7 people in tactical gear, faces deliberately blurred, but body language speaking of camaraderie and shared danger. And 6 of those people were officially deceased. One was looking at her own ghost in the photograph, wondering which version of herself would open that package when it arrived in 48 hours. The phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number, just 3 words. Tehran awaits. Wraith. She threw the phone across the room, watching it bounce off the opposite wall and land on the ugly carpet. It didn't break. Of course it didn't. Everything in her life was built to survive, to endure, to keep functioning no matter what trauma it endured, including her. Outside, dawn painted the highway with orange and gold, morning traffic flowing like blood through arterial roads, carrying people to jobs and lives and routines that suddenly felt impossibly distant. Lily pulled the curtains closed, sealing herself in darkness that felt more comfortable than daylight ever had. 48 hours, then everything would change again. And this time, there would be no more running, no more hiding, no more pretending she could ever be anything other than what 12 years of shadows had made her. The package arrived 36 hours later, 12 hours ahead of schedule. Lily watched through her motel window as a nondescript sedan pulled into the parking lot at 0300 hours, a delivery time chosen specifically to avoid witnesses. The driver wore civilian clothes but moved with military bearing, scanning the area with practiced efficiency before leaving a manila envelope wedged in her door and departing without knocking. She waited 20 minutes before retrieving it, using the time to verify no surveillance teams had established positions in the parking lot or surrounding buildings. Old habits, impossible to break. When she finally opened the door, the envelope was exactly where she'd expected, sealed with tamper-evident tape that showed no signs of compromise. Inside her room, she spread the contents across the bed with methodical precision. Satellite photographs of Tehran's diplomatic quarter, taken within the last 72 hours. Intelligence briefs on security protocols at various embassy compounds. And a dossier with a single photograph paper-clipped to the front page. The face staring back at her belonged to a ghost she had hoped never to see again. Scorpion looked older in the surveillance photo, deeper lines around his eyes, silver threading through dark hair. But those eyes remained unmistakable, cold, calculating, belonging to someone who'd survived by being smarter and more ruthless than everyone hunting him. The dossier detailed 3 years of sporadic sightings across the Middle East. Damascus, Beirut, Baghdad, always moving, always one step ahead of intelligence services that wanted him for crimes ranging from weapons trafficking to assassinations that destabilized entire governments. The file listed 14 confirmed kills attributed to him since Tehran, each one executed with the precision that marked special operations training. At the bottom of the dossier, handwritten in red ink, He knows you're alive. He's been searching. Lily's hands didn't shake as she read. That disturbed her more than the content itself. The realization that her body had already accepted what her mind was still resisting. She was going back. Not because duty demanded it, not because superiors ordered it, but because Tehran had left a wound that 3 years hadn't healed. And Scorpion held the only answers that could close it. Her satellite phone rang at 0430, the encrypted tone piercing the motel room's stale silence. She answered without checking the caller ID. Only 3 people had this number, and 2 of them were dead. Package received. No greeting, no identification. Standard protocol for secure communications. Its status? The voice belonged to Major General Charlotte Kingsley, though no official roster would ever confirm her connection to JSOC's darkest operations. She'd been Lily's handler for 8 years, the voice in her earpiece during missions that tested the boundaries of legal warfare. Contents reviewed. Timeline is tight but manageable. Lily kept her tone professionally neutral, burying emotions under layers of tactical assessment. Scorpion's pattern suggests he's establishing a permanent operation base in Tehran. If we don't move within the next 2 weeks, he'll have infrastructure that makes extraction impossible without international incident. Extraction isn't the primary objective. The words hung in dead air for 3 seconds that felt like hours. Lily understood immediately. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was termination with extreme prejudice, dressed up in operational language that made assassination sound like pest control. You want me to kill him? Not a question. A confirmation of what she'd suspected since seeing Tehran in that first phone call. I want you to complete the mission that went sideways 3 years ago. Scorpion has intelligence that compromises ongoing operations across 4 theaters. Every day he remains active, American lives are at risk. Israeli lives. Allied assets we've spent decades cultivating. Kingsley's voice carried the weight of command decisions that kept generals awake at night. He was your partner. You know how he thinks, how he moves, where his blind spots are? You're the only operator with any chance of getting close enough to matter. And if I say no, then we send someone else, someone who doesn't know him, someone who'll probably fail and create an international incident that damages relationships we can't afford to lose right now. A pause waited with unspoken pressure. But we both know you won't say no, because Tehran is unfinished business, and you don't do unfinished business. Lily wanted to argue, wanted to prove that 3 years had changed her, that civilian life had softened edges sharpened by a dozen years of wet work. But Kingsley was right, had always been right about her psychological profile. The need to complete what she'd started was coded into her DNA deeper than any training could reach. Timeline and support package. Wheels up in 72 hours. You'll insert through Turkey under diplomatic cover, transit to Tehran via established networks. Local assets will provide equipment and intelligence updates. Primary window is 9 days from insertion. There's a diplomatic reception at the Russian embassy that Scorpion has been confirmed attending. Security will be heavy, but manageable for someone with your skill set. And extraction, conditional on mission success. If you complete the objective, we pull you out same night through the Armenian border. If complications arise, Kingsley let that sentence die unfinished. They both knew what it meant. Plausible deniability required leaving operators in place when missions went sideways. Official disavowal. Permanent ghosting from an organization that had already declared her dead once. Understood. Lily stared at Scorpion's photograph, searching for some trace of the man she'd trusted her life to during operations across 7 countries. All she found was a stranger wearing a familiar face. One question. What happened in Tehran? The real story, not the sanitized version from the after-action report. Silence stretched long enough that Lily wondered if the connection had dropped. Then Kingsley spoke with careful precision that suggested classified information she was choosing to share off-record. Intelligence failure at the highest levels. Someone inside the task force fed operational details to Iranian intelligence. Your team walked into a prepared ambush with overwhelming force. 6 operators killed in the initial contact. You fought your way out. Scorpion disappeared during the chaos. We assumed he was captured or killed until sightings started 18 months later. Another pause. Recent intelligence suggests he wasn't captured. He was the source. He sold out the team. The motel room tilted sideways. Lily gripped the bed frame, forcing air through lungs that had forgotten how to process oxygen. Scorpion, her partner, the man who'd saved her life in Kandahar and Baghdad and Damascus, who'd taught her half the advanced techniques that kept her alive through impossible missions. He'd murdered their team. You're certain? Her voice came out flat, emotionless, the product of training that suppressed trauma responses in favor of operational effectiveness. 97% confidence based on signal intelligence and financial records that placed substantial payments in offshore accounts he controls. Timing corresponds with 2 weeks before the Tehran operation. He sold you out for $3 million and a guarantee of immunity from prosecution. Then why is he still operating? If he made a deal, because he double-crossed them too. Took the money, provided false intelligence, and disappeared before they could leverage him for additional operations. The Iranians want him dead as much as we do. The Russians, the Syrians, half a dozen intelligence services that thought they'd bought a controllable asset. Kingsley's tone hardened into something approaching admiration. He's played everyone against each other for 3 years, staying alive through pure skill and absolute paranoia. Which is why you're the only one who can get close. Because somewhere under all that betrayal, he still remembers when you were partners, when he trusted you. And you want me to weaponize that trust. I want you to finish what he started when he murdered your teammates. Call it justice. Call it operational necessity. Call it whatever lets you sleep at night after it's done. But it needs to be done, and you're the only one who can do it. The call ended without farewell or good wishes. Standard protocol for operations that officially didn't exist. Lily sat in darkness for 20 minutes, processing information that rewrote 3 years of grief and survivor's guilt. She'd spent 36 months torturing herself with what-ifs and should-haves, replaying Tehran's final hours through every possible lens of tactical analysis, wondering if she'd missed signs of the ambush, if she'd made decisions that cost her teammates their lives, if she deserved to survive when 6 others hadn't. Now she knew. The ambush had been unavoidable because it came from inside, from someone who knew their capabilities, their standard operating procedures, their psychological profiles, from someone who'd calculated exactly how to destroy them with maximum efficiency, from Scorpion, her hands curled into fists hard enough to make knuckles crack. 3 years of misdirected grief crystallized into something far simpler and infinitely more dangerous. Cold, focused rage. She pulled out her laptop and began operational planning with the systematic thoroughness that had kept her alive through 47 missions. Tehran's layout, Russian embassy security protocols, Scorpion's known associates and behavioral patterns, escape routes and contingency plans for when, not if, complications arose. By dawn, she had a workable strategy. 15 hours later, she had 3 backup plans and identified 17 decision points where tactical adjustment would be required. By the 72-hour mark, she was ready. The flight to Turkey passed in manufactured anonymity. Tourist-class seating, unremarkable appearance, the kind of studied ordinariness that made immigration officers stamp passports without second glances. She carried nothing that couldn't be explained by her cover identity as a freelance photographer documenting architectural heritage sites across the Middle East. Her camera equipment was genuine and functional. Her portfolio website had been live for 18 months with regular content updates. Her social media presence showed exactly the right level of engagement for someone pursuing passion projects while funding travel through commercial work. It was a perfect cover because it had been built over years, not weeks. One of a dozen identities maintained for exactly this kind of operation. Istanbul provided the transition point. A dead drop in the Grand Bazaar delivered travel documents that transformed her into a Turkish cultural consultant with legitimate business in Tehran. 6 hours later, she was crossing the Iranian border in a tour bus full of academics attending a conference on Persian literature. Local assets met her at a safe house in Tehran's northern suburbs, a comfortable apartment that looked exactly like a dozen others in the district, anonymous through perfect ordinariness. The 2-person team who'd prepared her support package introduced themselves with call signs only, Falcon and Mercy. Both were Iranian nationals who'd worked with Western intelligence for reasons Lily didn't ask about, and they didn't volunteer. "Equipment is in the bedroom closet," Falcon said. his English carrying the precise diction of someone who'd learned it through intensive study rather than casual conversation. And standard loadout plus specialized items requested through your handler. Building schematics for the Russian embassy are updated as of yesterday. Security rotations current as of this morning. Lily checked the equipment with practiced efficiency. A compact 9mm pistol with suppressor and 3 magazines. Lock-picking tools disguised as cosmetics. Communications gear built into what appeared to be a standard smartphone. A cocktail dress that somehow incorporated flexible body armor without appearing bulky. And one item that made her pause. A syringe filled with clear liquid, labeled only with a serial number she recognized from advanced weapons training. Specialized instructions for high-risk operations. Leaves no trace in standard toxicology screening. Causes cardiac arrest within 90 seconds that appears completely natural. Perfect for situations requiring absolute discretion. She'd used similar compounds twice before, both times in situations where conventional weapons would have compromised missions critical to national security. Both times she'd spent weeks afterward wondering where the line existed between necessary action and murder. Both times she'd concluded the line was wherever her superiors drew it. This time felt different. This time it was personal. Timeline to target event? She asked, returning the syringe to its protective case. 4 days. The Russian embassy reception begins at 2000 hours. Scorpion will arrive between 2100 and 2130 based on historical patterns. He favors fashionably late arrivals that let him assess security and guest composition before committing to extended presence. Mercy pulled up surveillance footage on a tablet showing a man who matched Scorpion's recent photographs entering various diplomatic functions across the Middle East. He's cautious but not paranoid, confident in his ability to spot threats before they materialize. Overconfident, Lily corrected, studying his body language across multiple videos. He's relying on skills that worked when he had institutional support. Now he's operating independently, which means gaps in his security that he probably hasn't identified. What's his current protection detail? Minimal, 1 personal bodyguard confirmed. Former Spetsnaz, competent but not exceptional. Scorpion seems to prefer mobility over heavy protection. Classic special operations mentality. Better to avoid confrontation than survive it through superior firepower. Lily nodded slowly. That matched the man she'd known. Someone who'd survived through being smarter rather than tougher. Through identifying threats early enough to circumvent them entirely. It also meant he'd underestimate threats he didn't see coming, which made social engineering more effective than direct assault. Guest list for the reception? Falcon handed her a printed roster running to 43 pages. Diplomatic corps from 17 nations, cultural attachés, trade representatives, intelligence officers under diplomatic cover. Standard mixture of legitimate business and espionage that makes embassy functions useful for networking across multiple agendas. And my entry point? You're listed as cultural consultant for a Turkish textile preservation initiative. Legitimate credentials, verifiable background, no flags that would trigger additional scrutiny. You'll have approximately 3 hours of functional access before social dynamics require departure. Mercy's expression carried professional sympathy. That's your window? Once he leaves the embassy, he disappears into security protocols we can't penetrate without risking exposure. 3 hours to locate Scorpion in a crowd of 200-plus guests, establish contact without alerting his security awareness, create opportunity for private conversation, and execute a mission that would close the darkest chapter of her operational history. She'd worked with tighter margins. Specialized insurance programs for military personnel and defense contractors offer comprehensive coverage that standard policies cannot match. These premium plans include protection for high-risk overseas deployments, combat-related injury coverage with no exclusions, disability benefits that account for classified work histories, and life insurance policies with enhanced death benefits for special operations personnel. With confidential claims processing that respects operational security requirements and expedited payouts that don't require disclosure of mission details, these programs understand the unique financial risks faced by those serving in classified capacities. The next 4 days passed in meticulous preparation. Lily studied every available photograph of Scorpion, identifying micro-expressions and behavioral tells that revealed emotional states beneath professional masks. She memorized the Russian embassy's floor plan until she could navigate it blindfolded, identifying choke points and alternate exits for when contingencies required rapid extraction. She rehearsed her cover identity until the fictional consultant's history felt more real than her own fragmented biography. And she wrestled with the question that kept surfacing during quiet moments. Could she actually kill someone she'd once trusted? The philosophical answer was straightforward. Scorpion had murdered 6 teammates and betrayed operational secrets that cost additional lives across multiple theaters. Justice and operational necessity both demanded his elimination. Professional duty made it imperative. But professional duty hadn't shared coffee in safe houses across 7 countries with the man whose face smiled from those surveillance photographs. Professional duty hadn't learned advanced close-quarters combat from someone who'd patiently corrected her form during hundreds of training sessions. Professional duty didn't remember the night in Baghdad when Scorpion had talked her down from panic after a mission went sideways. His voice calm and certain, while bullets traced patterns through darkness around their position. That voice, those memories, they made duty complicated in ways her training had never addressed. On the 4th evening, Lily stood before a mirror in the safe house bedroom, adjusting the cocktail dress that transformed her from anonymous operator into someone who belonged at diplomatic receptions. The transformation was comprehensive, hair styled in elegant waves instead of functional restraint, makeup applied with precision that suggested professional consultation, jewelry that sparkled without calling excessive attention. She looked like someone who attended embassy functions regularly, comfortable in environments where power and influence traded hands through polite conversation. She looked like someone Scorpion wouldn't recognize until too late. Falcon drove her to the Russian embassy in a car service vehicle that perfectly matched her cover identity's expected arrival style. They didn't speak during the 20-minute drive through Tehran's evening traffic. There was nothing left to say. Operational parameters had been established, contingencies planned, success metrics defined with brutal clarity. Either she completed the mission or she didn't. Either she survived or she didn't. Either she walked away from this night as Wraith one final time, or she became another ghost story whispered in corridors where official records never acknowledged her existence. The Russian embassy materialized through Tehran's urban landscape like a fortress pretending to be architecture. Heavy walls disguised as decorative elements, guard positions masked as aesthetic features, security infrastructure built into every surface with the thoroughness that came from decades of Cold War paranoia. Lily passed through 3 security checkpoints with credentials that satisfied increasingly sophisticated verification, her cover identity holding under scrutiny that would have collapsed manufactured legends. Inside, the reception hall blazed with light and conversation. Diplomats clustered in groups determined by national interest and personal agenda, their body language communicating volumes that official transcripts would never capture. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet provided cultural background that nobody actively listened to, but everyone subconsciously appreciated. Lily accepted champagne she wouldn't drink and began circulation through the crowd with practiced social grace. Her consultant cover provided natural conversation hooks, questions about textile preservation, observations about architectural details, professional curiosity about cultural heritage. She moved through the reception like water, present but unremarkable, building social capital through strategic engagement that made her belong. 90 minutes into the function, Scorpion arrived. He entered through the main doors at 21:17 hours, fashionably late as predicted, wearing a tailored suit that suggested wealth without ostentation. His bodyguard trailed 3 paces behind, the Spetsnaz veteran Mercy had identified, scanning the crowd with professional assessment that marked military training. But Scorpion himself moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd attended thousands of similar functions. Social navigation as natural as breathing. Lily watched from across the hall, maintaining her conversation with a German trade representative while tracking Scorpion's movement through peripheral vision. He gravitated toward a cluster of Russian officials, exchanging greetings that suggested established relationships. His smile reached his eyes. His body language communicated comfort and belonging. He looked nothing like a man who'd betrayed and murdered his entire team. She waited 30 minutes, letting him settle into the evening's rhythm, letting his security awareness relax as the reception proceeded without incident. letting him believe he was safe in this carefully controlled environment. Then she made her approach. The collision was precisely calculated, a stumble in crowded space, champagne sloshing dangerously close to expensive clothing, the kind of minor social crisis that required immediate attention and defused through gracious recovery. She bumped into Scorpion with exactly enough force to disrupt his conversation without appearing deliberately aggressive. "Oh goodness, I'm so sorry." Her Turkish accent was perfect, her embarrassment genuine enough to be convincing. "These shoes are beautiful, but apparently not designed for actual walking. Are you all right? Please tell me I didn't spill anything on your suit." Scorpion's hand had automatically steadied her, preventing the stumble from becoming a fall. Professional reflexes, impossible to suppress even in social settings. "No harm done, are you?" He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes locked onto her face with sudden, absolute focus. Recognition dawned like sunrise, transforming his expression from polite concern to shock to something approaching horror. "Wraith." The name came out barely above a whisper. His hand dropped from her arm. His bodyguard tensed, sensing threat without understanding its source. "Hello, Scorpion." She kept her voice low, pitched for his ears only despite the surrounding crowd. "We need to talk, somewhere private, right now." "You're dead. You died in Tehran." His tactical mind was already working, processing implications faster than conscious thought. "The entire team was killed. I saw the after-action reports." "You saw the reports you were supposed to see, the ones that declared me killed in action alongside everyone else you murdered." She let that word hang between them like drawn steel. "But I'm surprisingly difficult to kill, as you're about to discover." His expression cycled through calculations visible only to someone trained to read micro-expressions. Fight-or-flight responses warring with social dynamics that made either option catastrophic in this setting. His hand moved incrementally toward his jacket, toward whatever weapon he carried despite embassy security. "I wouldn't." Lily's tone carried absolute certainty. "Your bodyguard is good, but he's not fast enough to matter, and you know I don't miss at this range. We can do this civilized, or we can create an international incident that ends with both of us in Iranian detention. Your choice. You have 3 seconds." Scorpion's hand stopped moving. Professional calculation overrode emotional response. He knew her capabilities, knew she wasn't bluffing, knew that escalation in this environment guaranteed mutual destruction. "The garden terrace," he said quietly. 5 minutes, come alone or I disappear and you never find me again." "Agreed." He moved away through the crowd, his bodyguard following with confusion, evident in rigid posture. Lily waited exactly 3 minutes before making her own path toward the terrace doors, maintaining her consultant cover through strategic conversation that explained her movement without drawing attention. The terrace overlooked Tehran's glittering sprawl, lights painting the urban landscape in patterns that suggested peace and normalcy, rather than the intelligence war being fought beneath surface appearances. The night air carried diesel exhaust and distant cooking smells, the mundane reality underlying diplomatic pretense. Scorpion stood at the terrace edge, his back to the reception hall, hands visible and empty. His bodyguard waited inside, close enough to respond to trouble, but not close enough to overhear conversation. 3 years, Scorpion said without turning. 3 years I've been looking over my shoulder, wondering if someone survived Tehran besides me, hoping it was you, fearing it was you. Both. Lily maintained tactical distance, 5 feet separating them, close enough for conversation, far enough for response if he moved aggressively. You sold us out. 6 people dead because you valued $3 million more than their lives. Is that what they told you? He turned, and his expression carried something Lily hadn't expected. Genuine pain. That I betrayed the team for money? That I murdered people I'd served with for 8 years? The intelligence is solid. Financial records, communication intercepts, timing that places substantial payments just before Tehran. What else am I supposed to believe? Scorpion laughed, harsh and bitter. You're supposed to believe that maybe, just maybe, the people who sent us into Tehran aren't telling you the complete truth, that maybe the intelligence failure went higher than one operator selling out his team. Explain. One word, flat and hard. Tehran was compromised from the beginning. Not by me, by someone in the command structure who wanted the operation to fail. someone who needed plausible deniability for eliminating a task force that had accumulated too much classified knowledge across too many operations. His voice carried conviction that didn't match the profile of someone lying to save himself. The money you found in my accounts, planted, the communications, fabricated. I spent 3 years running because someone very powerful wanted me dead, and the easiest way to accomplish that was making everyone believe I'd turned traitor. That's convenient. Blame mysterious conspiracies instead of accepting responsibility for your actions. It would be convenient if it weren't true, but ask yourself, if I really sold out the team for $3 million, why would I still be alive? The Iranians would have leveraged me for additional operations or killed me when I stopped being useful. The Russians would have recruited me or eliminated me as a security risk. Instead, I've spent 3 years being hunted by everyone because I'm the loose end that proves Tehran wasn't a simple intelligence failure. He stepped closer, dropping his voice to barely audible. Someone needed us dead, Wraith, all of us, including me. You surviving was the only variable they didn't account for. Lily wanted to dismiss his words as manipulation, the desperate lies of someone facing execution. But his body language showed none of the tells associated with deception. No micro-expressions indicating fabrication, no stress responses suggesting cognitive load from maintaining false narratives. He believed what he was saying, which meant either he was telling the truth or he'd internalized the lie so completely that he'd convinced himself. Who? She asked. If there's a conspiracy, who's running it? That's what I've spent 3 years trying to figure out. Someone with access to our operational files. Someone who could manipulate financial records and communications logs. Someone powerful enough to orchestrate a cover-up that spans multiple intelligence agencies. He pulled a phone from his pocket, slowly, demonstrating it wasn't a weapon. I have files, evidence I've collected across 3 years of running, names, dates, financial transactions that paint a very different picture than the official story. Take it, verify independently, then decide if you still want to kill me. Lily accepted the phone with her left hand, keeping her right free for the weapon concealed beneath her dress. This could be fabricated. It could be, but you're smart enough to verify sources, and honest enough to adjust your assessment if evidence contradicts your assumptions. His smile was sad. That's why I hoped you survived, because you were always the one who asked questions instead of blindly following orders, the one who understood that sometimes the real enemy isn't who they tell you it is. Advanced tactical training programs now offer civilian certification in specialized military skills. These intensive courses cover everything from strategic leadership and crisis management to technical weapons systems and intelligence analysis. Taught by former Special Operations Forces instructors, the curriculum includes classified case studies adapted for educational use, hands-on scenario training, and networking opportunities with defense industry professionals. Legal consultation services specifically designed for veterans help navigate security clearance issues, transition assistance, and wrongful termination cases involving classified employment histories. The terrace doors opened behind them. Lily's hand moved instinctively toward her weapon before she recognized Colonel Foster's silhouette against the reception hall's light. Ms. Harper, how unexpected to find you here. His tone carried layers of meaning, recognition of operational context, acknowledgement of compromised security, subtle warning that their conversation had attracted attention. Colonel Foster. Small world. She slipped the phone into her clutch without obvious movement. I was just discussing architectural preservation with someone who's been declared deceased by 3 separate intelligence services, Foster finished, his gaze locking onto Scorpion with the intensity of positive identification. Interesting professional circle for a textile consultant. Scorpion's bodyguard materialized at the doors, hand inside his jacket. The situation balanced on a knife's edge. Diplomatic reception transforming into potential combat engagement through cascading recognition and threat assessment. Gentlemen, I suggest we all take a breath and consider our surroundings, Lily said calmly. Creating an incident here serves nobody's interests, including yours, Colonel. Unless you'd like to explain to your superiors why you're conducting unauthorized operations on Iranian soil. Foster's slight smile acknowledged the point. Touché. Although I could ask what brings a supposedly deceased special operator to a Russian embassy function when she's meant to be establishing civilian life in North Carolina. Unfinished business. Seems to be a lot of that going around. Foster's attention remained fixed on Scorpion. I don't suppose you'd consider surrendering peacefully. Would save everyone considerable complications. I don't suppose you'd believe that I'm innocent of the charges that made me a target, Scorpion countered. Innocent people rarely spend 3 years running from every intelligence service in the Western Hemisphere. Innocent people also rarely survive when powerful interests require their silence. Scorpion's hand moved in practiced motion, not toward a weapon, but toward the terrace railing. Which is why I'm going to leave now. You're welcome to try stopping me, but I guarantee the results will be messy enough to derail whatever operation brought you to Tehran. He vaulted the railing with fluid grace, dropping 10 feet to a lower terrace before anyone could react. His bodyguard provided covering presence at the doors, while Scorpion disappeared into Tehran's night, vanishing with the efficiency that had kept him alive through 3 years of being hunted. Foster moved to the railing, knowing pursuit was pointless. Well, that was interesting. He turned to Lily with expression mixing curiosity and assessment. I assume you have operational reasons for letting him escape? I assume you have operational reasons for being here instead of Fort Bragg? Fair point. Although mine involves preventing international incidents rather than conducting unsanctioned eliminations of her former colleagues. He studied her face in the terrace lighting. You're having doubts about the mission, about the intelligence, about whether you're being told the complete truth. It wasn't a question. He made claims, Lily said carefully. Claims that require verification before I proceed. Claims that conveniently absolve him of responsibility for murdering your team. Claims that suggest the situation might be more complex than official briefings indicated. She met his gaze directly. You spent 30 years in special operations. You know how often the official story is the complete story? Foster's silence answered more effectively than words. I'm going to verify independently, Lily continued. And if his evidence contradicts the intelligence I was given, then someone has been lying about Tehran, either him or my handlers. Either way, I need to know the truth before I kill someone who might be innocent. And if verification proves he's guilty, then I complete the mission I came here to finish. Her voice carried absolute conviction. But I won't be someone's weapon without knowing what I'm actually shooting at. Foster nodded slowly. That's the difference between operators and assassins. Operators think. Assassins just pull triggers. He pulled out his own phone, typed rapidly, then showed her the screen. My secure contact information. If your verification reveals something that changes the operational landscape, I'd appreciate notification. Unofficial, off-record, between professionals who've both seen enough classified operations to know that sometimes the biggest threats come from inside the system. Lily memorized the number before he deleted it. Why help me? Because 8 months ago, you saved my life in Fallujah. Because tonight you saved me from paperwork explaining why I killed someone at a diplomatic reception. And because I've spent 30 years watching good people get burned by bad intelligence from sources that valued political convenience over operational truth. He straightened his uniform jacket with parade ground precision. Also, because if there is a conspiracy around Tehran, I'd rather have someone of your capabilities investigating it than pretending it doesn't exist. He departed through the terrace doors, leaving Lily alone with Tehran's night sky and a phone containing evidence that might rewrite everything she thought she knew about the mission that had destroyed her team. She activated the device using protocols that suggested military-grade encryption. The files were organized with systematic thoroughness, financial records showing money trails that didn't originate where official reports claimed, communication logs with metadata proving fabrication, personnel assessments suggesting internal security breaches at levels above Scorpion's operational access, and one video file dated 6 months after Tehran, showing a meeting between someone wearing a U.S. Army general's uniform and an Iranian intelligence officer. The conversation was in English, clearly audible despite restaurant background noise. The task force is eliminated. All members declared killed in action. Operation Obsidian never officially existed, which means no congressional oversight, no awkward questions. And the survivor, the one your reports indicated escaped, being handled. We've created enough evidence to ensure if she surfaces, She'll be eliminated as a security risk rather than protected as a witness. The general's face was partially obscured by camera angle and ambient lighting, but his voice triggered recognition that sent ice through Lily's chest. She knew that voice, had heard it dozens of times during mission briefings and after-action debriefs. It belonged to the man who'd recruited her into Task Force Obsidian, who'd personally assured her that every operation was legally authorized and strategically necessary. Major General Charlotte Kingsley. Except the uniform in the video showed male rank insignia, the voice was masculine, and the face, when enhanced lighting revealed it in profile, belonged to someone she'd trusted with her life for 8 years. The person who'd sent her to Tehran, the person who'd sent her to kill Scorpion, the person who'd apparently orchestrated everything to eliminate witnesses to operations that couldn't withstand scrutiny. Lily's hands trembled as she forwarded the video to Foster's contact information with encryption that would survive interception attempts. Then she activated her own secure phone and dialed the number that connected directly to Kingsley. 3 rings, 4. On the 5th, connection. Wraith, status report. Contact made with primary target. Situation is compromised. I need immediate extraction. A pause that lasted 2 seconds too long. Define compromised. Target presented evidence suggesting operational intelligence was falsified. I need verification before proceeding with termination. Negative. Your orders are explicit. Complete the mission and extract. Questions about intelligence are above your clearance level. Then raise my clearance level. Because I'm looking at a video file that shows U.S. military personnel coordinating with Iranian intelligence about eliminating Task Force Obsidian, and one of those personnel has your voice. The silence on the line felt like falling through infinite darkness. When Kingsley spoke again, the warmth had drained from her tone entirely. Where did you get that file? From someone who's been collecting evidence instead of trusting that his superiors were telling him the truth. Wraith, you need to listen very carefully.